Welcome back. You're listening to Politics Uncensored with me, Zoe Grunewald.
And me, Ali Milani.
Meta has just lost a court case that could have huge implications for children in the future. The company behind WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook has just been fined $375 million for damaging children's mental health and exposing them to sexual content. But that's not the only court case which Meta has lost this week. Yesterday, a woman successfully won her case over her childhood addiction to social media. In a small court in Los Angeles, both Meta and YouTube were found liable. Now they are facing a wave of 40 more similar lawsuits. Well, joining us now is Aaron Mack, tech reporter for Politico. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron, this is huge news, actually. Can you kind of take our listeners through the implications of this case?
Yeah, so both cases are the first time that we've really seen families, young users be able to hold social media platforms accountable for impacting their safety and their mental health. So this is kind of a bellwether for thousands of trials that are going to happen this year. So it's a good sign for people suing these companies, but we'll see what shakes out.
Aaron, can I ask you, what have they been found liable for? Just for listeners, I think one of the challenges will be, well, how can you prove, that this is addictive, for example, or the damage is directly linked to WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook? Can you just go through what were they found guilty of exactly?
Yeah, so what they were found guilty of is designing platforms that had addictive design features. So this is the LA case. So you have infinite scroll, autoplay, content recommendation algorithms. And the jury found that this effectively hooked kids onto the platform and led them to have, body dysmorphia, anxiety, depression. And then in the New Mexico case, basically what they found is that the platform, Facebook, didn't have enough safeguards to protect kids from online predators who were trying to reach them.
It's strange to me because it sounds like that. Like, could the same argument not be made with TV shows, for example, putting hooks at the end of episodes and making you like binge watch stuff and the kind of image? Like, what kind of implications could be broader than this? Because if you're the social media cases, organizations, which I'm definitely not wanting to defend them, but they'll be saying, hey, like this sort of addictive practice exists everywhere. Like, if you're just walking down the street, the sort of advertisements that hit you,
or junk food,
or like TV shows. I mean, I literally watched like 6 seasons of Game of Thrones in like 4 weeks, right? So, do I have a case, Aaron?
Right. Yeah, that's a big argument right now that this is a big moral panic, like you saw with the video games in the 1990s. Like my parents told me I'd get addicted to Grand Theft Auto, and nothing came of that. Those companies weren't held liable. I think this right now there's a big upswell of concern over how social media companies are impacting kids, and I think what the advocates are trying to do is link this more to something like a casino or tobacco rather than a traditional TV show or a video game or what have you.
Tell us about this. You just mentioned the US tobacco trials. So for our listeners, in the 1990s, tobacco firms faced a series of trials which ultimately held them accountable for selling a product that they knew was harmful, and it resulted in a $200 billion settlement and a callback to companies like Philip Morris, who were accused of hiding information. Is this as similar to that? I mean, are we basically seeing a kind of rerun of the tobacco trials, but this time in tech?
It's early to say. I think there's more of an uphill battle for these cases. For the tobacco cases, there was a huge body of research that showed that smoking was definitively linked to cancer. Like you can see how your lungs are damaged when you smoke cigarettes. This is a little messier. Like there are a lot of things that impact someone's mental health. Like in the Los Angeles case, the person who was suing had, when she was a child, her parents had divorced. She had a tough home life. So that's what Meta tried to say. Like there are a lot of different things that impacted her mental health, and it wasn't substantially due to the platform.
What, Aaron? What are the? I noticed that it's WhatsApp, but like it's got Meta on here. It's got WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, which are all part of that company, as well as YouTube. I don't see X or Twitter on here. Were they not part of the lawsuit? I need a reason to drag Elon Musk into this. So help me out. Why were they not here?
Yeah, they were dragged in. I think they're being sued in other cases.
That's good
Snap
to hear.
was also, yeah, right. Snap settled the case. TikTok settled the case. So I think just depending on the case, you're going to see different, platforms being targeted.
All right, my most serious question is about the algorithm itself. We've spoken in the UK specifically about whether there needs to be regulation of algorithms, whether they need to be published and accessible to lawmakers and to people more generally. Is that conversation that's been having? Are they going to have to tailor their practice so they don't get sued in the future? What actions could they put in place now to make sure this doesn't happen for them in the future?
Yeah, so there's legislation being considered right now to implement design features that would make algorithms less addictive. So, like time limits, like warning labels saying that if you use social media, it'll cause mental health issues and, overuse and that kind of thing. I think a big challenge right now in the US is that the Supreme Court has found that the way that you use algorithms in some ways is a free speech issue because you're deciding what content appears on your platform in the same way that you decide what articles in a newspaper. So I think that's going to be a future case where you have to decide whether an algorithm is in some way like an editorial decision and that is protected by free speech rights.
One of the most frequent emails read out from the case yesterday, I believe, was Mark Zuckerberg telling a group of executives to increase dwell times on our platforms and that people should spend longer on our services. Did the ruling find that this was a deliberate attempt to make social media platforms more addictive? As in, companies knew exactly what they were doing and were doing it deliberately, or was it that they weren't taking enough precautions to prevent obvious addiction?
I think it was a little of both, is what it seems like. I think the internal documents were a big part of this case. In the LA trial, you had Google employees saying that this is kind of like a casino. For Meta, they had some people saying we're kind of like drug pushers. And then there was also a study that Meta commissioned internally to see whether beauty filters on Instagram, the ones that kind of make you basically give you plastic surgery virtually, whether they should be banned due to body dysmorphia, and they decided not to go along with that recommendation. So yeah, the internal documents were a really big piece of this case for sure.
And can I ask, so the jurors determined that they had acted, and I quote, acted with malice, oppression or fraud, which I think is a very serious statement to make about them. Not that I necessarily disagree, although I question how addictive Facebook is. Maybe I'm too young for Facebook. What have they said? So what are Meta and YouTube, for example, saying? Are they really concerned about this, or are they just taking this on the chin? Because they fined $375 million, which is a lot of money for me and you, but probably not a lot for them. Are they just taking this on the chin, or are they taking this as a serious threat to the future of their platforms?
Yeah, I mean, so in the New Mexico trial, Meta says they're going to appeal. In the LA trial, Google's going to appeal. I don't know if Meta has made that call yet, but even though it's a little bit like $375 million is nothing for them, but if you keep having more and more of these cases build up, I mean, the price is going to get higher and higher, and there's thousands of other cases coming, so it could end up being, have quite a financial impact.
And then just where lawmakers sit, obviously this is going to be an increase. In the UK, it's already becoming a thing. We're talking about banning social media for under 16-year-olds, for example. Tell me about where Capitol Hill sits. Is this kind of dividing people according to partisan lines, or is it not like that in terms of what to do about social media and whether banning is even on the table for kids?
Yeah, so we've had a number of prominent politicians call for a ban. We had Rahm Emanuel, for example. I think Gavin Newsom has expressed some interest in it. I think one of the tricky things here is, what do we mean by a ban exactly? So Australia, for example, kids can't make accounts on social media, but they can still access a lot of harmful content. You all in the UK, you have the Online Safety Act. So that's age-gating content. So like if you have a violent post, you can't access that unless you have age verification. In Australia, a kid can still see that, but they just can't make an account.
Do you think that's possible in the States? Do you think you could see that coming in the States, or is there just not enough support on the Hill for it, a sort of social media ban for under 16s?
It could be a constitutional issue for sure. On the Hill, I don't think there's enough momentum yet to see.
Sorry, mate.
Soon,
what's the constitutional issue? Free speech?
Yeah, right. So if you're, preventing kids from accessing just social media in general, that's seen as that could be seen as overly broad. So we have exceptions where we can say, okay, you can ban porn for kids, you can ban, this extremely gratuitous content. But if kids are just going online to, I don't know, see their friends, access information through these social media platforms, that's a little dicier. And a judge could say, well, these kids have a right to receive information. So banning, a platform across the board is overly broad restriction on speech.
And Aaron, you're tech reporter for Politico, which must be one of the busiest jobs going at the minute. You must be so clued in to how these companies are feeling after these rulings. Are they worried? Because, as we say, there are 40 more similar lawsuits to the one that was found yesterday coming down the track. As Ali pointed out, there are multiple countries, that are putting in regulation, trying to stand up to tech companies, talking about banning social media for under 16s. Is there a feeling that Silicon Valley, that these tech bros might finally be starting to feel the heat?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think over the past couple of years, there's been this, again, huge movement to hold them accountable for what they're supposedly doing to kids' mental health. I think a big issue is if you have bans or different policies in a bunch of different countries, they're going to have to cater their sort of safeguards and policies to each country, which can be a little difficult to implement. And, generally this is leading to, again, like just in the public, there's seems to be a sort of backlash that this is feeding against social media companies. Back in the 2010s, they were seen as these great, luminaries. Great. They're harkening a new era of an enlightened society, and now we're seeing this shift where people are really concerned that they're harming kids.
Aaron, I want to ask you, as the tech reporter for Politico, more broadly, so we take it away from kids. You mentioned how, like, what you see on the algorithm, for example, is tantamount to what you might see on a newspaper in the old days, right? On what's pushed to you. I want to ask about the political implications of that, and whether, for example, I'm not obsessed, well, I might be obsessed with, but Elon Musk, for example, buying X, right, pushes, I believe, I don't know if I have proof of this, but I believe specific political content to people based on his ideological position, right? And I wonder if, is that something that's being looked at by lawmakers as to whether that needs to be published for people to see, whether that needs to be regulated. So for us, for example, we have an Ofcom regulates our media, especially during election time, to make sure there's balanced coverage. Whether that's something that organizations are going to have to do, because we've got this, you won't know him, Aaron, there's a fella called Rupert Lowe here who Elon loves. Anything he tweets instantly gets like 200,000 likes, right?
He really gets under Ali's skin, as you can tell.
Me, yeah. Largely because he just never replies to my baiting of him. But for me, there's just no question that he is being artificially sort of propped up because he matches Elon's political ideology. And I wonder if there's some sort of regulation that you know of in terms of what political content is being pushed on these platforms.
I think that would be very tricky, again, due to the constitutional issues. I mean, there's been recommendations or proposals to make these like public utilities. But again, if you look at the newspaper analogy, like, the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, they're allowed to choose what kind of political content they have. For example, in their opinion section, that's curating editorial content. That's kind of a First Amendment right. So I think any sort of regulation on the political content you see on a platform would be really tricky to pass muster in courts.
Not even just publishing the algorithm so people can see if it's favoring one side or the other.
I think, yeah, that transparency measures could be a little more tenable. There is something against what we call like compelled speech, so forcing a company to say something. But we've done it with nutrition labels, calorie counts, that sort of thing. So that could be a way to get at this, but it would be, because it's political in nature, I think that could be.
That's a good example, actually. I like that about the nutrition, because it's you're not restricting what people can get, but they should have the information of what the product they're consuming is.
Yeah, exactly. But when you're saying a calorie count, you're not saying anything politically. You're just saying, this is how many calories is in this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. That was Aaron Mack, tech reporter for Politico. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for, but make sure you follow Aaron Mack on X